Here is the story of Sarah, a life of dust and diamonds, of bitter waiting and impossible joy. What if your whole life, your very identity and worth, was wrapped up in a single promise? And what if, year after year, decades after decade, that promise not only failed to appear, but drifted further and further into the realm of the impossible? This was the story of Sarai, the princess of Ur, who would become Sarah, the mother of nations. Hers is not a quiet, gentle story. It is a story of grit, desperation, jealousy, and laughter, born from pure disbelief. The city of the moon, before the dust of the road, there was the mud of the river. Sarai was a daughter of Ur, a city of towering rigoraths and bustling markets, a place that worships the moon. She was beautiful, so beautiful it would later become a dangerous blessing, and she was a wife. Her husband, Abram, was a man of growing importance, a man who thought deeply, a man who was starting to listen to a different voice. They had everything: wealth, status, family, but in the quiet of their grand home, there was a silence. In a world where a woman's power, her very purpose, was to bear sons for her husband, Sarah's womb was still and silent. She was barren. Every month, the hope would be reborn, and every month it would die again. A small, private grief. She would see the street children playing, see the pride in the eyes of other women as they held their sons, and a knot would twist in her stomach. She was Sarai, my princess, but she had no prince to give. The whisper, he came to her one night, his eyes blazing with a terrifying sanctity. Abram had been speaking for moons about a new God, a single all-powerful creator who was unseen. And now this God had spoken to him. He told me to leave, Abram said, his voice low. Leave what? The city? For the spring
I never
pastures?
meant to cause you
Sarai
pain. I
asked,
know, but it's hard to
her hands
forget.
still. Leave everything, he replied. Our country, our family, our father's house? He said. He said he will make of me a great nation, that he would bless me, and I will be a blessing. Sarah stared at him. A great nation? This man, her husband, whose only heir was a distant cousin. She wanted to laugh, but the look on his face stopped her. He was serious. To leave all was to leave civilization. It meant exchanging stone walls for gold skin tents, paved streets for endless sand, and the protection of her king for the mercy of the wilderness. All for a whisper, all for a promise of a nation from a man who couldn't even father a single child. But she was his wife, and so, with a fear she would never admit, Sarai packed up her life, turned her back on the moon god, and stepped out into the unknown. The whisper led them to famine. The land God had promised them was scorched and starving. So they did what all nomads did. They went to the one place that had food. They went to Egypt. As they neared the great, imposing cities of the Nile, Abram turns to her. The look in his eyes was not that of a great patriarch, but of a frightened man. Sarai, he said, his voice tight. Look at you. You are so beautiful. When the Egyptians see you, they will kill me to take you. She felt a cold dread. This was not a compliment. It was a curse. Please, he begged. Tell them you are my sister. It will save my life. He was asking her to erase herself, to deny the marriage, to stand alone as an unmarried woman, a prize to be claimed. He was asking her to be pound for his own survival. She said yes. And the very thing he feared, she cursed. She was noticed. She was taken from him, her brother in quotes, and brought to the palace of the Pharaoh. She was dressed in fine linen, anointed with oils, and added to the king's harem. Abram, her brother, was showered with sheep and cattle and camels for her sake. We do not know what happened in that palace. We only know she was trapped, a beautiful object in a guarded cage, her husband safe and wealthy outside, while she lived a lie. It was God, not Abram, who saved her. A plague struck Pharaoh's house, a terrible targeted affliction. Pharaoh, realizing he has been deceived and has crossed a divine line, summoned Abram in a rage. He threw Sarai back at him and banished them from Egypt. She left the palace with jewels and servants, but she also left it with a new hard stone in her heart. She had learned a terrible lesson. Her beauty was a danger, and her husband was, at his core, a man who could be ruled by fear. Then came the horror promise. Years turned into a decade. The decade turned into two. They were no longer just a family, they were a tribe. Abram the mighty, his tents in flocks, spreading across the plains. He was a sheikh, a warrior, a man who spoke with God, and God kept promising. Look at the stars, Abraham, God said. So shall your offspring be. Sarai, standing outside her tent, would look at those same stars and feel nothing but the ache of emptiness. She was now Sarai the old. The promise felt like a mockery. She had the wealth. She had the status. She commanded a legion of servants. But the one thing she craved, the one thing God kept promising, was denied her. She watched the servant girls, young and fertile, and her heart's grief began to curdle. It turned hard into a sharp, pragmatic resolve. God has promised Abraham a nation, but perhaps he has been silent on who would bear the child. She was 76 years old. The dream of a child from her own body was not just dead, it was a forgotten ghost. She marched into Abram's tent with a plan. It was a plan born of desperation, a plan that was culturally acceptable but emotionally devastating. The Lord has kept me from having children, she said, her voice flat. All the tears long since cried. Here is my servant Hagar. She is Egyptian. She is young. She is healthy. Abram looked at her, confused. Go to her, Sarai ordered, her voice breaking just a little. Sleep with her. Let her bear a child for me, so that I can build a family through her. She was, in essence, handing her husband to another woman. It was a surrender, a tactical, heartbreaking, final admission of her own failure. And Abram, the great man of faith, who had spoken to God, listened to his wife. The plan worked, the bitter roots. It worked immediately. Haggai conceived. And in that instant, everything changed. The moment Haggai knew she was pregnant, the dynamics of the camp chattered. She was no longer just Haggai the servant. She was Hagar, the mother of the heir. She looked at Sarah, her barren mistress, and for the first time, her eyes held no obedience, but contempt. That look of contempt broke something inside Sarah. This was the thanks she got. This was the reward for her sacrifice. All the bitterness, the jealousy, the years of repressed rage boiled over. Sarai, my princess, became a tyrant. She abused Hagar. She dealt harshly with her, the scripture says. She made her life so miserable that the pregnant woman fled into the barren wilderness, choosing death by test over life with Sarai. Haggai was only returned by an angel, and the camp was poisoned. Ishmael was born, and Abram loved him. But for Sarai, the boy was a constant walking reminder of her own failure and Hagar's triumph. The solution had become the disease. Then came the laughing ghost. 13 more years passed. The camp was a tense, divided place. Abram was 99, Sarai was 89. Ishmael was a teenager, the clear and obvious heir. Then, on a hot, dusty afternoon, three strangers appeared. Abram, in the custom of the day, ran to greet them, offering water, rest, and food. He rushed to the tent. Sarai, he hailed. Quick, make bread for our guests. She was inside, unseen, her hands covered in flour, a woman of 90 doing the work of the tent. She was a ghost of the beauty she had been. She listened from the shadows as her husband and the stranger spoke. Then one of them, a man who spoke with an unsettling authority, said the words that would change the world. I will return to you in about a year, the visitor said, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son. From inside the tent, a sound erupted. It wasn't a giggle, it was a dry, cynical, involuntary laugh. A snort of total disbelief. Me? She thought, wiping sweat and flour from her wrinkled brow. After I am old and worn out, and my husband is ancient, am I really going to have this pleasure? The visitor's head snapped towards the tent. Why did Sarah laugh? The voice cut through the tent's flap, and Sarah's blood ran cold. She stumbled out, terrified. I didn't laugh, she lied. The visitor looked at her, his eyes seeing not just her lie, but every year of her disappointment. No, he said, not unkindly. You did laugh. Her name was changed. No longer Sarai, meaning my princess, but Sarah, princess to many. A new name for a new promise, but she was still 90. And then her body, which had been a traitor for a century, began to change. It must have been terrifying. At first she would have dismissed it, an old woman's fantasy. But the months passed. Her monthly curses, long since a memory, did not return. Her body, which she knew better than anyone, was shifting. The whispers in the camp must have been deafening. First doubt, then mockery, finally awe. Sarah, the old woman, the barren one, was pregnant. We can only imagine the 9 months, the fear of every twin, the careful way she would have walked, the way Abraham must have looked at her, not just with love, but with a renewed, profound terror and wonder at the God he served. The laughter of a mother, finally. The labor must have been a miracle in itself. But he came. He was real, a screaming, healthy, perfect baby boy. Abram was 100 years old. Sarah was 90. She held the impossible in her arms. She held the promise. She held a son. And when they asked her what his name would be,
I
she
never
declared
meant
it
to cause you
for
pain.
all
I
to
know, but it's
hear.
hard to
His
forget.
name is Isaac. It means he laughs. The cycle was complete. The bitter, cynical laugh of doubt in the tent had been redeemed and transformed into the breathless, joyful laugh of a mother. God has brought me laughter, she announced to the entire tribe, her eyes shining, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me. The laughter was real, but the old bitterness was not so easily washed away. The day came for Isaac's wedding feast, the massive celebration. Isaac, the child of the promise, was the center of it all. And then Sarah saw it. She saw Ishmael, the son of the Egyptian, the son of her own desperate plan, mocking. We don't know what he did. Perhaps it was a cruel imitation of Isaac's toddler's work. Perhaps it was a jeer, a threat, a teenager's cruel bullying. To Sarah, it was a dagger to the heart. This was not a game. This was legacy. This was the promise. The old rivalry ignited, but this time it wasn't the jealousy of a barren wife. It was the protective fury of a lioness. She stormed to Abraham. Her words were not a request, they were a command. Get rid of that slave woman and her son. That boy would not share in this inheritance with my son Isaac. Abram was crushed. He loved Ishmael, but God himself intervened, telling Abram to listen to his wife. The next morning, Sarah washed from her tent as Abram gave Hagar and Ishmael some bread and a skin of water and sent them out into the wilderness. It was a brutal, final, and necessary act. Sarah had her son, she had a promise, and she would move heaven and earth and even cast her rivals into the desert to protect it. She had waited 90 years for her laughter, and she would let no one and nothing silence it. Here comes the story of our mother Sarah in the Bible. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Please hit the notification bell and follow Mrs. Sampson Evelyn TV for more updates and interesting insights into the Bible stories. Thank you for watching. Bye. Until then, see you next time. Please like and share once again. Thank you.